And this morning we want to welcome retired senior lecturer in the Department of History, Dr. Claudius Fergus, joining us to chat a little bit about what we have retained as Africans in the Caribbean. Good morning to you, Dr. Fergus.
Good morning, and good morning to the viewers.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm a bit sleepy still.
Welcome.
I completely
think
understand.
every morning we go through that.
All right, so Doc, we want to talk this morning a little bit about some of the things that we have retained as Africans living in the Caribbean. What are some of the traditions and some of the things that we would have brought across with us from Africa that we still practice and maintain today, or at least we can see the influence of it passing through the Caribbean still?
Well, before we talk about the lived experiences, let me just piggyback a little bit on the tail end of what I saw in the cooking part that you just did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of what we have around us in terms of food ingredients, in terms of our botanical legacies, we are not aware of. For example, when Africans were brought to the Caribbean, they brought a whole range of plants and animals, the lentils, for example, the red beans, the okra, the tamarind, all these are Africans. In terms of animals, you know, the fowls, the yard fowl, the guinea fowl, these are animals that came out of Africa. You know, even goats, the rice, for example, African rice. And you have other grains that were brought as well, you know, sorghum and millet, and all these things constituted, you know, ingredients in our African cuisine. And of course, the use of the mortar and the pestle for processing. So we need to look at these things. The okra, this is African. A lot of the plants and animals around us are African, and they are not only, you know, within the African diaspora, they are also part of the national community and the national inheritance as well. So I just wanted to touch base on that. Now, in terms of the legacies, we need to look at them also in the context of the 500 plus years of the systematic attempt to suppress all of these retentions, you know, including the language, the cultural norms, the spirituality, and so on, so that retentions are also to be seen in the context of tools or weapons against these attempts to erase African culture in the Caribbean. These strategies included, you know, criminalizing African culture and African language and African practices, and also strategically demonizing them so that Africans would lose their sense of pride in practicing and even get to hate them. So that we need to look at the retentions in these contexts. And I would generally classify retentions along two main streams. One is the linguistic aspect of it. We may not speak African languages anymore, but according to Professor Maureen Warner-Lewis, Igbo and Yoruba were spoken in Trinidad, you know, among Yoruba communities, Igbo communities, up to the 1960s and 70s. But what we have now are the retention of African words, phrases, proverbs. Some of those proverbs have been translated, of course, but that's all part of the linguistic legacy. But in addition to that, the method, the structure of the African language has remained. So linguists have demonstrated that what we speak may sound, you know, like English, the English words, but it's not English in terms of the structure of the language. It's African, West African in particular. The tonality of our language is West African. So that's a legacy that's not only within the community of the African diaspora. It's become national and also regional,
Right.
but outside of that, we know certain words, for example, they're very common words in the language, like even the word banana, for example. Banana is Wolof. Yam comes from the Wolof language. You have the Anansi stories. Anansi comes out of the Akan language. Susu. Susu comes out of the Yoruba
Hokkata.
language. And Susu is one of the very important African retentions, along what we can call the economic aspect of African retention. So the Susu and the Gayak, those are two very important institutions. And of course, the Susu is another aspect that has been nationalized as well. Many other ethnic groups practice as the Susu. You have the foods. Fufu is still used as a food, as a name. Kuku also is African, comes out of the Kikongo language, and we have things like lota. You have lota on your face. Lota is African. Or even, certain habits like stoopsing, right? A lot of people don't recognize that stoops is a method of communicating. You find African women, particularly Yoruba and Igbo women, stoopsing quite a lot. It's a form of expression, of disgust and contempt. So you have a lot of words. Maureen Warner-Lewis has done considerable studies on that from Central West Africa and West Africa. So we can go to her works and look at them. I'm talking like this because I know your time may run out.
Right. So, Doc, let us see if we can squeeze in a question there. We talk about a lot of the things that we have retained, but even so, the very, very significant effort to suppress a lot of what we know and what we do and how we do it. How do you think that suppression has influenced our knowledge and just even how we conduct ourselves as a people?
Well, that's a very, very important question, because the suppression has been going on for a very long time, as I said, over 500 years. And it became embedded in our education system as well, where we have been indoctrinated into European norms, European practices, and the African element, has been systematically suppressed as well. Even African festivals tend to be omitted from textbooks, so that has affected the African people in a negative way, where Africans have built up a sort of disdain and contempt for the African. And one of the aspects or strategies of suppression is in defining what is African as Creole. I think we need to emphasize that. Even in terms of food, we talk about Creole dishes, Creole food, when in fact it's very much African. So the term Creole is a sort of euphemism that is used to define a sort of hatred and disgust and contempt for the African. So that aspect of the suppression has been very effective, I would say, in spite of the fact that so much has been retained against that, which speaks to, the resilience of African culture on a whole, and the determination of Africans not to lose their humanity and their culture totally, and become, assimilated into the culture of the oppressor.
But Dr. Fergus,
yes.
as you stated, even though we've retained so much, the fact that it is not comprehensive and that even we as a people use and call our dishes Creole as compared to African, doesn't that suggest that what we have retained is not really serving us in the way it should?
Well, it's a difficult thing to really acknowledge that it's not serving us in the way that it should, because we'll have to determine what is the way that it should serve us. What I'm saying is that these are historical truths that they have been suppressed. They have been very effective in suppression, but there are many groups within the community who have been engaged in restoring and reviving a lot of these practices. We may not know much of them, perhaps because of media as well. You know, so what you are doing here is very important, but most of our media also seem to be part of the system of suppression and demonization of African culture and African retentions. So I think more of what you are doing is necessary in order to bring back some kind of respect and dignity to African retentions.
All right, Dr. Claudius Fergus, we want to thank you so much for sharing with us this morning. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but worry not. I'm sure we'll have a part 2 to this conversation, even outside of African History Month. So thank you so much.
Yes, I really hope so. I hope so.
Yes.
And I want to congratulate you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fergus. That's Dr. Claudius Fergus there, retired senior lecturer at the Department of History. But obviously, there's a lot of work still to be done, even though we have so much of who we are. To me, line about, you have bits and pieces, but that comprehensive package is not there. So stop calling the food Creole. Let's start there.
Let me start there. Stop calling the food Creole. Let's take a break and come back with more. Stay tuned.